p.m. This is the now weekly meeting of the Cohasset Select Board. Tonight's meeting is being conducted on the Zoom platform. We are going to first go into executive session, and I'll read the exception in a minute. When we come back in, I will reread the protocol for participating via the Zoom platform. So I'll start off by taking a roll call.
Jack Creighton here.
Corey Evans here.
Diane Kennedy here.
Carrie Thompson here.
Okay, we're all here. And I would like to read the executive session exemption. We are going to go in to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of the public body and the chair so declares. I do declare we are going to be going in to discuss the Treats Pond drainage situation, and we are not going to be discussing collective bargaining tonight. So we are going to have about a half-hour executive session on Treats Pond. If there is a motion,
Moved.
I would like to comment on that. I think that much of the things that may be discussed are not properly subject to the executive exemption. My understanding is a lot of things will be information that I believe should be publicly available to the town. Okay. So I just want to make that's because I don't want any of us to be constrained to discuss this with our constituents on the basis of the executive session. However, clearly things that have to do with a legal strategy are properly within the executive session.
Absolutely. And I think we can all be watch guards of that. Town council will be joining us, and we can bring up that position and just make sure that we stay on to the matters that relate to potential litigation or being a party to any kind of conflict on behalf of the town. So was there a motion? I'm sorry, Corey.
There is a motion on the floor. Second.
Thank you. Is there a second? Okay, roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye, I guess.
Corey Evans, aye, yes.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Okay, we're going to go into an executive session, which is a separate link that we're going to be given in a minute. And then we will come back to conduct the remainder of the public meeting when we are done. Yes, check our emails. On the various platforms, we have a quorum of the board. We already opened the meeting earlier. I'm just going to read the Zoom information for the public and those that are within the Zoom platform. Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We're running a little bit behind Tuesday, March 16th, Cohasset Select Board meeting. Tonight's meeting will be conducted on the Zoom platform and live streamed on Cohasset 143 TV and Cohasset's Facebook page. The public is invited to participate on the Zoom platform, which can be accessed using the link provided at the top of the posted agenda for tonight's meeting. Members of the board and other scheduled participants will be able to participate when called on by the chair from within the Zoom room, if you will. Board members will be able to ask questions of any participant, and we ask that everybody raise their hand before speaking. All votes taken at this meeting will be by roll call. Members of the public who wish to ask questions are asked to utilize the question and answer feature on Zoom, including typing in their name and address for the public record. Carrie's my co-pilot. As vice chair, she will review questions and direct them to the appropriate participant for a response during each agenda item. This meeting is also being recorded and will be available for later viewing on Cohasset 143 TV. I know there's a lot of interest in our 8 o'clock agenda item, and I'm going to review sort of the framework for public input when we get to that point in the agenda. So bear with us. If anybody has any comments on matters that are not on tonight's agenda, please type it into the question as part of our public comment period. We will get to any public comment again on items not on the agenda after we hear the community update, just to try to keep us on track. So with that, I'll turn it over to Chief Sylvia or Quigley or Glenn or Pam or our community team. How's everybody doing?
Good. I'll actually start, and I'll make it pretty brief. So right now the DPH is actually publishing statistics for vaccines by community to let everybody know how everybody's doing. And in Cohasset, it's actually doing very well. The data as of 1 week ago, March 9th, 80% of people ages 75 plus have received at least one dose of vaccine, and 78% of people who are 65 to 74 have received one dose. So, now one more week later, I'm sure the numbers are even better. And so we're trying to fill up one final clinic on Thursday, and our elder affairs are calling people, and they're actually having a bit of a hard time because so many people have gotten their vaccines already, at least the first dose. So we're just kind of reaching out. We have 12 more slots left for Thursday morning, one final clinic at Wilcott Commons. So if you know of anybody that's 75 plus, you might want to reach out to them and let them know to contact Elder Affairs, and we'll get them registered. And anybody even in their 70s that's still looking for a shot, we have 12 slots left. So that would be great if we could get that filled up tomorrow morning. And then one more new announcement that just came through tonight. So tomorrow, Mass DPH will be announcing when all remaining groups in Massachusetts vaccination plan will be eligible. So for example, if you're a grocery store worker or something, now we're going to know the definitive plan going forward when everybody's going to be eligible. And the state also just wants to remind everybody that they should pre-register on their site. You know how Cohasset, we had our own little pre-registration thing. State's now doing the same thing. So if you pre-register and, for example, you're a grocery worker, when they get to that point, in line, then they start going down the pre-registration list of, whoever's in that category. So that's it. That's my
great.
updates.
Great news. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-on on that. Spoke with Nancy LaFosse a little while ago. Elder Affairs will be in the office by 8:30 in the morning. So anybody that is interested in one of those 12 final spots should call Elder Affairs first thing. They will be filled on a first come, first served basis. As Pam said, we're going to try and work down the list here from 75 down to 65, down to anybody with two comorbidities or two specific illnesses. So if you think you fit into one of those categories, please contact Elder Affairs and they will take care of getting you either on the standby list or get you an appointment based on, where we stand. So that's the only thing additional I had on that.
Do we anticipate getting any additional vaccines once it's kind of open to the under 65s?
It all depends, Diane, on the manufacturing process. If they can produce more excess vaccine and there's plenty to go around, then we'll probably get more. But while there's still a much greater demand than supply, we're not going to get it.
Okay. Thank you. Paul?
So quick thing, the J&J numbers for number of doses given to the Commonwealth, I think they received an extra 8,000 doses this week. So it looks like the production is starting to ramp up a little bit more. So, I'm sure that we'll start to see more coming to the Commonwealth as well as other states. We're also doing very well, not only just from Cohasset point of view, but from the state. We've got about 26% of the population vaccinated one dose, and the J&J has loosened up a lot of that double dosing requirement. So as well as at the hospital, the numbers are down quite a bit. I would caution though, for the next few weeks, particularly through the Easter and Passover holidays, is to really just be real careful with the quarantining and the exposure risk that's there, because we're not quite out of the woods yet. That's it.
Carrie, sorry about that.
Yeah, we have a question from the audience from Sean Galvin asking about Cohasset teachers and whether we have any plans to give them a special clinic for a vaccine, and how many teachers at our schools do we know have been vaccinated so far?
Fortunately, the teachers have done extremely well. And when we last spoke with Pat Sullivan, he said there was only one remaining teacher. Other than that, everybody has been taken care of. And we're even doing a couple of like cafeteria staff this week in this final clinic. So they've done excellent.
Terrific. Very good. Okay, any other questions from the board? As always, thank you all. Thanks for giving us your Tuesday night. You had it off last week, so we'll keep it going that way every other. Thank you very much. Good night. Moving right along, Paula Linares is here with our Q2 investment update.
Oh, let's see, this quarter ending December 31st, that's what this report is for. And we were all positive for the quarter with all our time periods and all our investments, which is always good to hear. For the expendable trusts, we're up 1.8 to 2.6% for the quarter, 1.5 to 9.2% for the year, 2.9 to 6.5% for 3 years, and 3.2 to 5.9 for 5 years, and up 3.3 to 4.7 since the inception. For permanent trusts, we did a little bit better. The 6.4 for the quarter, 8.3% for the year, 7.6% for 3 years, 7.8 for 5 years, and 7.3 since September of 2014 when we started. For OPEB, we're up 9.7 to 10.1 for the quarter, 12.2 to 15.1 for the calendar year to date, 8.3 to 8.6 for 3 years, and up 8.9 to 9.9 for 5 years, and 6.7 to 8 since inception. And our total investment gains for the town of Cohasset is over $725,000. So
Wow.
we're doing pretty good. I think it's gone down a little bit since then, but that's
Let's
where
hope.
we are. That's where we are for now, end
yeah,
of December.
We'll take
Anyone
any
has any
up.
questions?
Yeah, any upward motion we can do. Paula, is there any anything that concerns you that bears watching that you're flagging, or is it just kind of as usual with the stock market, hold your breath and
Right,
hope the
yeah,
best?
I mean, yeah, lots of things can go sideways on you. You can't tell, but you know, I think we're pretty well positioned, and I just recently had a conversation with our advisor from Rockland Trust, and he's comfortable where we're at and how we're positioned. So we're going to look at it again, probably maybe a little bit more often this year than the previous years, because we don't know how things are going, especially heading into spring. So hopefully it's all good, but we're going to keep in touch just to make sure that we're positioned properly.
Great. Any questions from the board? All right. Good work.
Alrighty,
We got you in and out.
take care.
Thanks, Paula.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye. Chris, so I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk us through what you might need for action on placing articles on the annual town meeting warrant. And then I know we're going to have Michelle Leary joining us to discuss some of the articles within the warrant that relate to town fields and recreation facilities.
Okay, thank you, Diane. So at the moment, the warrant that we're working with has about 30 articles on it. There's 9 zoning, as you know, that's been referred to planning, and those will be hopefully circling back to the process to this board in early April. At your Gesundheit, Corey.
Gesundheit.
That's what I was doing earlier, so hopefully I will not do that in my segment here. So the advisory meets Thursday, and they're going to go over a couple more budgets and a number of routine articles. So my hope is that we'll be able to circle back with this board next week, and you could start recommending articles. I would say, at least on the draft warrant as it exists, and I think was in the packet. I guess the first 5 articles you can add to the warrant if you want, that are all super routine, are 1, 2, 10, 12, and 13, if you wanted to. That's the annual report, reports of committees, should there be any. I don't know that there are any, but they're just automatic articles on the warrant anyway. And then 10 is, just a second, I'm pulling it up here. These are all they're all like annual, articles. It's the revolving fund annual spending limits, that's become an annual requirement under the Municipal Modernization Act. Nothing's changing from last year. Article 12 is the Chapter 91 liability, which again is another annual article we do in case we end up getting funding from the state for any work in the Chapter 91 zone, which is along the waterfront. And then Article 13 is additional real estate exemptions. That's an annual renewal, but again, nothing's changed on that. A lot of the others are kind of common too, but you're not there quite yet. There's going to be a budget on the warrant, obviously. There's still obviously ongoing conversations about the water and sewer potential rate increases and all those. So those aren't quite ready to go anywhere yet. So if you want, you don't have to do anything tonight if you don't want to. If you want to put those 5 articles on the warrant, that you could do that tonight. There's nothing really to recommend yet. But hopefully next week you'll get your first block of those to consider. And again, they'll be mostly these routine ones that we should have some of these financial articles polished up for you for next meeting. I'm talking about the, unfortunately, there are some bills of prior year this year. Some of the stabilization numbers I think are pretty set. And then we might have the one-time cost ready. That might go another week after that. But so you'll probably have 7 or 8 articles next week to opine on. And you'll know them in advance. And again, they're all going to be pretty routine. I know this is actually Corey's first cycle through this. So if you have any questions offline, or if any of you do about any of the articles, feel free to call. These are the first block of these are routine.
We also have a larger than usual audience joining us both on the Zoom platform and likely at home. But just the sort of the protocol is that we vote to actually put an article onto the warrant. So what Chris was referencing is there are 5 that are going to be on there, because they're standard annual articles. So we vote to put them on, and then we typically later, once the articles have been reviewed by advisory or any other committee that is making an advisory opinion to us on an article, we vote a recommendation to town meeting. So just by voting to put it on the warrant doesn't mean we necessarily agree with it or not. It's just literally putting it into the warrant. So I don't know if anybody has any questions or wants to put forth those 5 that are ready to just get teed up in there. And Chris, do they usually stay in that order though? That's one of the challenges.
Yeah. So I would probably reference them but for their number now, because they're tied back to something and the numbers are likely to change depending on what happens. At least the later ones, 1 and 2 are not going to change. So 1 is the annual town report, 2 are the reports of committees, 10 is the Chapter 91 liability. I'm sorry, 10 is the revolving fund, annual setting of the revolving fund spending limits. 12 is the article, Chapter 91 liability, and then 13 are annual real estate exemptions. So those would be the 5 articles that I'd recommend that you look at tonight.
Anybody like to make a motion to put those on the warrant?
We place on the warrant for 2021, May 24th, Town of Cohasset, Article 1, Annual Town Report, Article 2, Reports of Committees, Article 10, Departmental Revolving Funds, Annual Spending Limits, Article 12, Massachusetts General Laws Liability, Chapter 91 Liability, and Article 13, Additional Real Estate Exemptions, Annual Renewal.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call, please. Jack, you're on mute.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
All right, we have 5 articles, 35 to go.
And then the next piece of tonight, Michelle Leary is here to give a look at requests. Again, they're starting to come fast and furious, and I think it's good to put into context what's being looked for. And there's multiple funding sources for these, but for fields, recreation facilities, and even some harbor recreational related requests that we're looking for at this meeting. So if you'd I'll turn my camera over to you.
if I could just jump in and just give it a little bit more context before I turn it over to Michelle Leary. These are specific requests that will be on the town meeting warrant, either through a funding ask through CPC or a funding ask through capital budget or other. This is not the later request for baseball, but the CYBSA is also is going to CPC to ask for some field work. So that discussion is part of Michelle's discussion and presentation. And I know Mark Chase is here if we want to give him an opportunity to say hello in a few minutes. But Michelle, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Do I have access to share my screen?
Yes, you do.
Great. Okay. So high level, I just took a snapshot of all the recreation facilities in town and capital needs that we may see over the future years, as well as the current years. So I'm just going to walk through quickly the recreation properties and what they entail so we have a better idea of the future expenses that we may have to invest in these facilities. So we have the Beechwood complex, and there's a playground there, basketball courts, fencing, bathrooms, irrigation, and lights. There's been many upgrades to that complex, but nevertheless, there's always something to anticipate. We're going for money for basketball courts this year. And at any time, we may have to ask for money for the irrigation fixes, upgrades of lighting, and things of that nature. On the Sawyer Street complex, similar. There's a playground there, basketball courts, fencing, and lights. The Milliken Field complex, there's baseball diamonds, it's fields. We're looking at a field house. There's 6 tennis courts over there, fencing and irrigation again. And then you have additional recreation properties that we don't really highlight often because they are on the school property, but they are used by the community as a whole. So you have the front field, the back field, alumni field, once again, fencing and irrigation over there. Deer Hill, you have the fields, the playgrounds, fencing, irrigation, and a basketball area. Osgood Schools, you have the playground, fencing, and irrigation again. So as far as capital and CPC requests as they pertain to recreation, this year we're asking for $22,000 to complete the Sawyer Street project. Many have seen that the basketball courts have been, the ground has been laid for those. We're just waiting to put up the backboards and do some additional tree plantings, but we will need an additional $22,000 of funding for that. Beechwood basketball court, we're asking for $70,000, and that is to resurface the court due to cracks due to tree roots growing on the courts. The Milliken Field Shed, this is something we've attempted for many years now. It's gone out to bid maybe 4 or 5 times. And just due to the escalation costs and the type of building we're looking at, we've asked CPC for money in the past, which they've granted. We have $213,000 left in that account. But believe it or not, we're asking for another $113,000 to complete that project. We're also asking for $20,000 for a tennis study. And this is really to site other locations in town to put additional courts. Tennis and pickleball is extremely popular. Having only 6 courts in town for people to play on doesn't seem to be sufficient. So we're hearing the community and we're going to try to head it off and look for another area for tennis courts. Alumni Field, it's gone past its useful life. The approximate cost to replace the turf and the track is $1 million. The school did present to CPC, and they are going to award them up to $375,000 to replace the track portion. Unfortunately, the turf itself is not something that can be replaced with CPC funding. So future funding needs. We're looking at a tennis court pickleball reconstruction somewhere else in town, as well as the Bancroft courts. To redo the Bancroft courts, we got a quote of $750,000 to redo those 6 courts. Playground maintenance, $25,000, and that's to upgrade some equipment. as it deteriorates over the years. ADA accessibility is a big one. We have a couple quotes out there. To make Sawyer Street ADA accessible, we're looking at about $55,000, as well as Milliken Field, $45,000. In Recreation's 10-year plan, they have a future skate park vision. They have preliminary costs of about $150,000. To crack seal some of the courts over the years without having to do a complete reconstruction, you're looking at about $25,000. The Sawyer Street parking lot that abuts the new basketball courts and the playground, just to resurface that and to stripe it, it's approximately $65,000. And then irrigation upgrades at the various fields, about $12,000. I've spoken to Mark Chase at length about his needs as for CYBSA. And they really do want to make improvements to the Barnes complex. They're looking to replace all the scoreboards. And for 3 scoreboards, the cost is approximately $25,000. To make it ADA accessible, it's about $100,000. The field improvements, they're looking at $25,000 annually, and that is for all 3 fields, as well as, I believe, Beechwood Field. They're looking to install batting cages at about $25,000. The Beechwood ball field for maintenance, for 4 years, it's $48,000. So $12,000 for 4 years. And Deer Hill, they're looking to renovate the softball field, is there at $19,000.
Wow.
All of these requests are going before CPC. So we just want to make sure there's a fine balance so everyone understands of all the facilities in town and everything that we have to look at as we move forward. Because oftentimes people just think of the facilities that you see the kids playing on or adults using the most, but there still are other facilities in town that everyone takes advantage of.
Right. I think, Michelle, I'm going to ask Mark to just briefly speak if he is interested. But one of the questions I have, or one of the things I want to talk with the board about at a future meeting once we get through the warrant, is putting together a committee on fields and recreational facilities in the town, so that we can take this list and expand it and really put together a 5 to 10 year, improvements plus maintenance schedule, understand who's responsible for what. The schools oversee some fields, recreation oversees some fields. In the case of CYBSA, they they are on town land, but they're pretty much running their fields separately and taking care of them as they can. And just getting a more holistic picture so that we know what's important, and what the priorities are. For example, with, we have only 6 tennis courts, and we have a huge varsity and junior varsity tennis program at the high school. So when they're practicing, it's impossible for somebody to just get their neighbor and go hit some balls. So I would love to have a more holistic approach to how we talk about all of this going forward. So stay tuned. It's been something that I wanted to do for a while. And then Mark Chase, hello.
Hello, Diane. Can you hear
I just
me?
want to put you on the spot for just a few minutes, just to talk about the specific requests that you're going to be bringing in front of CPC.
Yep. Can you hear me, Diane?
We sure can. Yep.
Good. Okay. Well, I think I appreciate Michelle's listing of the things that we had talked about, but since I talked to her, I decided to reduce a lot of our requests because we wanted to focus in on the ADA piece. So I'll just go through my presentation here, if that's okay. All right, so thank you for listening, allowing us to come before you to make these requests, first of all. And my name is Mark Chase. I'm the president of Cohasset Youth Baseball and Softball Association. And with me are Andy Sims, CYBSA softball vice president, and John Cavanaro, the principal of Cavanaro Consulting, both of whom will either present or provide some technical support for some of our requests. So CYBSA is a nonprofit 501c3 organization that operates the Little League baseball and softball programs in Cohasset. We have more than 400 Cohasset children and their families participating in our various activities. We strive to offer our kids and their families the best possible overall experience within our financial means. This effort, of course, requires considerable resources, both financial and through the hard work provided by the many dedicated volunteers in our organization. CYBSA is endeavoring to raise funds to meet the ever-growing demands of our vibrant baseball and softball community while trying to keep our fees as affordable as possible. Moving forward, our financial needs are substantial. In order to maintain an up-to-date facility and a safe, family-friendly environment that Cohasset and all its residents can be proud of. And we come before the select board now to seek permission to request CPC funds for the following much-needed projects. And we have three. We whittled down Michelle's list to three. First is the completion of the ADA compliance work at Barnes Complex. The second is a restoration of the Deer Hill softball field. And the third is the field improvements at Barnes Complex. So the first one, which is the completion of the ADA compliance work at Barnes, there's a little history in the Cohasset Open Space and Recreation Plan 2019 to 2026, published around 2018. The Barnes Complex was cited for some ADA deficiencies. So CYBSA initiated a plan to correct those deficiencies in two phases. Phase one began in 2018 with us purchasing 3 ADA compliant bleachers, one for each field, to provide a hospitable environment for the handicapped to enjoy viewing baseball and softball games. Also in phase one, we engaged Cavanaro Consulting to prepare an engineering plan that would bring us into compliance with federal and state ADA requirements. Phase two is the implementation of the Cavanaro engineering plan and the subject of this proposal. The plan consists of the following projects. One, concrete work around the snack shack to provide handicap access to the restrooms and to make the snack shack area ADA compliant. Two, install a drainage system, including catch basins, piping, crushed stone, etc., to mitigate flooding and erosion from storm water runoff. Three, regrade the lower parking lot to control stormwater runoff in conjunction with the drainage system. And four, to construct 2 handicap parking spaces on the lower parking lot and provide ADA compliant asphalt walkways through the 3 ADA bleachers. John Cavanaro of Cavanaro Consulting is here to provide technical detail on these ADA projects and to answer any engineering questions you may have. The total cost of the ADA work at Barnes Complex is approximately $100,000, and we would be seeking 100% CPC funding for this project. I have discussed the procurement ramifications with Michelle, and we believe that we can break down the projects and associated costs to comply with the town procurement requirements. The second major project is the Deer Hill Elementary School softball field restoration project. And this is a classic feel-good project where the local Little League organization steps in to help fix up and use an overgrown dormant ball field. It really is that straightforward. The softball program within CYBSA has grown steadily since 2015 and has reached a record enrollment of 105 players in grades K through 8. We currently have 1 playable softball field in Cohasset, which is Freedom Field on North Main Street. Grades K to 12 use this field for softball, and Freedom Field is also the home field for Cohasset High School varsity softball. We have exceeded the scheduled capacity of this field, and for the previous 2 years have been borrowing fields from other towns. Thank you, Hingham, Norwell, Canton, and more, so our girls can play softball. We are now seeking additional playing field space inside Cohasset and have identified the softball field at Deer Hill Elementary School as the leading candidate for restoration. The Deer Hill softball field was installed in 2003-2004 during the major school district renovation project impacting the high school and Deer Hill Elementary. Deferred maintenance on the fields has accumulated, and a large effort is now needed to bring this great softball field in a fantastic location back to playable condition. The total cost of the Deer Hill softball restoration project is $19,000, and we would be seeking 50% CPC funding for this project. We can comply with the town procurement requirements for this project, and the final the final project is the Barnes Complex Field Improvements. In order to maintain our facilities at the Barnes Complex, there are several smaller non-routine maintenance improvements that need to be made. First, the renovation of the Barnes field dugouts to meet safety standards. Second, the restoration of the Barnes batting cage. Third, the installation of safety fencing and netting at various places on the field. Fourth, installation of a batting cage on Chase Field. Fifth, repairing perimeter fencing all around all fields, including the gates, hardware attachments, etc. 6, repair and paint the Barnes Field storage sheds. 7, restore warning tracks in Freedom and Chase Fields. And from this list and perhaps other items unknown at this time that may manifest themselves later, we would like to be able to select those improvements which we feel are most urgent to accomplish and most beneficial to maintaining a safe and properly functioning Barnes Complex facility. We would cap the total aggregate cost of these projects not to exceed $25,000. We would be seeking 50% CPC funding for these projects, and we can comply with the town procurement requirements for these projects. In the package that I sent you, I attached the quotes and engineering plans for the ADA compliance work and the Deer Hill softball restoration. I have been collecting competitive bids on the smaller projects, and I don't have them all at this point, but I can provide them later if you'd like. And in summary, these are the proposed improvements for 2021, and with your blessing, we will take them to CPC for funding. Thank you for listening and your patience.
Thank you, Mark. Good presentation. Any questions from select board members? I do have one question. Oh, Paul, go ahead.
Well, I think the school project, that was active field, probably 5 or 6 years after we moved in. And that really, I think that's going to be a great upgrade because that location is perfect for either a practice or even for a regular field because it's got parking and access, and it's, I think, already in place. It's a matter of restoration, but it is on town school property. So technically, we probably just need the blessing on that.
I think, Paul, Andy's here, I believe, but I'm pretty sure he has a meeting with the school committee on April 7th to discuss.
Okay, great.
Yes, that's correct.
Is that right, Andy?
That's correct. Yeah, the April 7 school committee meeting. I'll be there.
And that was, Carrie, I saw your hand, but that was sort of where I was going earlier with my discussion about creating some kind of a field committee because, who does have to check off on what projects and when in the process. So thank you for that. Carrie?
Yeah, thank you, Mark, for all that info. I'm a big fan of a lot of the things you're trying to do. I'm a former softball player, so pulls at the heart. This might be, so obviously I especially am excited to hear about the girls being talked about and, women's sports in general, but is there any way that any of our fields could be considered in the future as being dual fields as both baseball and softball to be able to use those spaces as both? I know that it's a little more complicated logistically, but I know a lot of towns are doing that now where they're able to be measured for both baseball and softball. I don't know if you've considered that, but especially with the location like Deer Hill, is that a place where we could maybe expand and have both played there?
Well, I don't know about Deer Hill, but I know we have both baseball and softball fields at Barnes Complex, as you probably know. But with a softball field is easily used for baseball, but not vice versa.
Yeah.
So, for example, with a softball field, you could put a portable mound on the field and you have a baseball field.
Right.
So, with a baseball field, it's a little more difficult because you have a mound, and girls don't pitch from a mound, they pitch from flat ground. So, I think a softball field could be used for baseball. And the Deer Hill would probably, I don't know what Andy would say about this, but it would be a good candidate if you wanted to do something like that, particularly for younger children.
Right.
Great. Andy?
Yes, I totally agree. It would be. And part of the project is actually we are pulling out the clay infield, replacing it with a stone dust or a stone dust mixture. So it'll be a really low maintenance, high drainage surface, all season, all weather, baseball, softball, kickball, phys ed class. So it'll have, many uses.
That's great. Any other questions? All right, John Cavanaugh, you got out of this one easy. I know that our friends on CPC will kick some tires around on the specifications that you're proposing, but we as stewards of the town property wanted to hear your project for the town baseball softball field. So thank you very much. Unless there's any objection, I think you could go forward with your plans, and good luck.
Okay, well, thank you, Diane and all.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Michelle, thank you. Michelle, did you want to move on to Harbor or?
So I don't have anything prepared for
Okay.
Harbor. I'm happy to high level talk about some of the requests that went before CPC.
Please.
So as everyone knows, we are finally working on the Parker Ave boat ramp, looking to break ground in the fall of this year. We did receive a Seaport Economic Grant for the engineering and feasibility study for $170,000 for that project. We did go, Lori went before CPC and asked for funding for that 25% match piece. So I believe they awarded up to $360,000 for that project, for that match, in case there was any overages in the estimate that we received. The other project would be the Government Island Conveyor System project. We are moving forward with that. We did receive the Seaport Economic Grant for that as well. We received $160,000 for the engineering and feasibility study for that project. We are moving forward with permitting and an additional Seaport Economic application for the actual breaking ground on that project, which will be next year. The other project for the harbor we're working on is Laurie has been working with the South Shore VOTEC to construct a new harbor master building. She's been in close contact with them. She's filling out all the appropriate paperwork to get a cost estimate from them. And I believe she's going to go before capital for that funding. Trying to think if there's anything else with the harbor. Oh, one last thing. So at the town landing, she's looking to replace the cement dock. So she did ask CPC for $35,000 in funding to replace that. And she intends on replacing that after the summer season.
Okay. And then the Parker Ave boat ramp, what's the timetable for that work?
Yep. So that will break ground, if I'm not mistaken, around Columbus Day of this year. And I believe the project, because of fishing regulations, it has to be completed by February, the end of February, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Any questions from the board? Okay. All right, Michelle, I think you're off the hook, unless you want to hang out for our next discussion, which you may.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
I'm just gonna, I'll tee us up in a minute. Somebody has requested a phone number to, okay. We're on time. So before we get going into the next agenda item, which is the proposal for installation of lights on the Barnes Field complex, I just want to give some context to this discussion. And so that we can, appropriately kind of manage the conversation, because I know there's a lot of people that would like to be heard. Basically, tonight, some representatives from Cohasset Youth Baseball and Softball Association are going to walk us through what they would like to propose for lights on the fields, on the baseball field, softball field on North Main Street. In order for them to proceed with a project like this, they would need our approval to go forth and go into permitting mode, which at the very least will include a ZBA appearance, et cetera. So tonight, we are going to hear the proposal, and I think there are going to be likely three outcomes that I can envision. One is that we would request more information and ask them to come back with that. A second possible outcome would be for us to vote an approval in theory that we think this would be a good idea, and they could go before the permitting boards, or that we don't support at this time pursuing field lights at the fields. So what I'd like to kind of frame how I want to go through the next 45 minutes. So Darren Souza from Cohasset Youth Baseball Softball Association is going to give a presentation for about 10 to 12 minutes. I'm going to open it up then at that point for select board member comments. And then we're going to handle public comments a little differently tonight. So if you're in attendance and you would like to make a comment through the Zoom platform, is the question and answer feature at the bottom of the page. Vice Chair Carrie Thompson will be reviewing those and summarizing them and not reading every one of them verbatim. I do want to assure everyone and thank you for taking the time to write all of us ahead of time. We had a lot of submitted comments that we will just summarize in theory. I think we've had over 20 different emails either recommending that we approve this project or that they have some concerns about the project. All of those documents will be attached to the record of this meeting. They will not be read. But Carrie will give us a good summation of both the comments on Zoom and the letters that we received. If there are members here or people in the audience that would like to actually be heard and come into the Zoom room, it is at my discretion. I would like to try to keep people commenting to limited to just a few, and also I ask everybody to be mindful of what has already been said. It doesn't help the discussion at all if people are just repeating what we've already heard. So if you do want to speak, please also make that note in the question and answer feature, and please keep your comments to 2 to 3 minutes, and we'll try to get through this in 45 minutes. I thank you all for your indulgence as I walk through that. And then do we have Darren with us? There he is. Hey, Darren. And
Chairperson.
how are you? So Darren, I'll just 2 seconds. I don't know if you have your slide presentation teed up.
I do. I don't see the screen share is enabled, but it is ready to go. So.
Okay, Tracy. And then if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and anybody that's here with and on behalf of you.
Absolutely. And thank you again for having us. With me today from CYBSA, I'll just introduce myself first of all. You've had a chance to hear from Mark Chase and Andy Sims from CYBSA. I was the chairman, I was the president of the CYBSA board for the past 3 years up until the end of 2020. And before that, I was a board officer. I've been with the board for 4 years and I've coached in Cohasset baseball for many years before that. This was a project that we had embarked upon prior to the end of my term. So we're kind of in its continuation here. So with me, I have Laura Soderberg, who is a member of the CYBSA softball committee and one of our most long tenured coaches and leaders in the program. I have Mike Berry from Musco Lighting.
Hello.
And Jared O'Neill is here from Island Lighting and Power. They would be the installer and the vendor there. So Jared's there without his video. Steve Girardi is another board member. He is part of the lights committee and he's joining us as well. So thank you.
Thank you.
Let me just see if this is enabled. Excellent. Okay. I'm just
And just, I'm gonna ask you to keep it as high level as possible, because
Sure.
really for us, it's not as much a technical conversation as it is,
Right.
you know, what you're interested in, but I'm sure we will have some technical questions.
Sure, and thank you. And, you know, just I want to also be complimentary and dovetail off of some of the points that are already been made by Mark Chase and Andy Sims. So there's some facts here that I'll try to avoid repeating as well. So, the general overview of this conversation is just, I'll give you a little bit additional snapshot of CYBSA as it stands today and the lack of field space as we see it. I want to frame this because I know we've talked about Deer Hill, and Deer Hill is actually a part of our overall solution to create more capacity, particularly on the softball side. What we need to account for on the Deer Hill side, I didn't go into detail here, is that we have a varsity softball team and likely a junior varsity softball team also claiming our space. So I know that the Deer Hill thing kind of seems to muddy the waters, but it actually, we leave a lot of the other demands out here that relate to high school softball. The families have been very vocal about the problems facing our field capacity issue. The program continues to grow. I want to really share about that. And then I want to just give a very high level overview of why we chose the Musco product, how we would approach lights in a very prudent and responsible and a non kind of shortcut, cheap way. I won't get into all the testimonials, obviously. I'll leave it open for Q&A. Again, Mike Berry and maybe Jared might be able to answer some technical questions, but I'm going to try to give you the very high level definitional ask that we have, and that should sort of target our request toward your theoretical approval. Many of you know that we've been around since 1952. And again, as Mark said, we're over 412 kids in counting, and we grow at a very consistent clip. The youngest ages are bursting at the seams, and also softball, as mentioned before, has very, very healthy growth that we're very proud of. Additionally, we've got over 100 volunteers that are working to make the season happen. So it's really, it's a central aspect to Cohasset life, raising a family here in this community. Very typically, we have a volunteer in a household and multiple children, often a boy and a girl on the baseball and the softball side, or different divisions. So, that's a very, very typical profile for our families. So I just wanted to give some numbers around where we stand with respect to field capacity. And the reality is when we compare ourselves to our neighbors on the South Shore, or really anywhere around the state, we do have a pretty low field count for our Little League players and our softball players as it pertains to the population. There's lots of ratios, but they kind of point to the same thing. So excuse me, I'm sorry. So, here we are with our 2019 census population of 8,548, and we have a pretty low field count. So when we adjust that for the size of the town, and we sort of average out the neighboring towns, we see that, we fall quite short. We have a lot of people for very few fields. When we factor in the presence of lights, which all the other towns have, the 4 towns that I'm showing you here, they average 1.75 lights. They have about 2. We kind of equate to what that means in terms of an incremental field, and that sort of calculates out at just under a half of a field. That's just a ratio to show you that we have very little to spread around to a lot of people. In the testimonials, you're going to see that they'll speak to these statistics. They will back them up. So where we suffer at a very high level is a lack of practice when the season gets started. To Mark Chase's point, scheduling home games away is very, very commonplace. And again, I sort of spoke to the bullets at the very bottom here. Those are just some parenthetical notation. So, at the very, very bottom here, if we were to light Freedom, Chase and Freedom Field, that would bump, our availability up naturally, and it would take it up to, a ratio of 2,214 people per field. With Deer Hill, if we were to factor that in, we would get, we would probably improve the ratio, even though we share that field with a lot of other organizations, like we do over at Beechwood for the bigger kids. But, you know, then we also have to account for the demand of the high school program coming in. Okay, so I think you all know how, you know, if it's, whether it's Little League baseball or softball, you know, Carrie mentioned she was a softball player. This is a very common profile, community to community, for kind of how we serve our families and our children. We offer programming ages 4 and up, and it's very popular at these ages. So, you know, up to age 7, it's T-ball, up to coach pitch games and all the fun things. They go from an hour a week to, you know, 4 hours on occasion, depending on the division. And then we get into the kid pitch entry point, and we have all these, you know, more Little League kind of things that you think of, with umpires and stolen bases and all these things. On baseball, on the Barnes complex, that only goes up to age 12. On softball, as Mark pointed out and Andy pointed out, softball is on the same size diamond all the way from kindergarten to through adulthood to the professional ranks. The time here is what you'd expect. Those are games and practices. Other things we do on the fields. Number one, we make up games. We have New England weather. So when the weather perfectly cooperates, we may get away with an average of, a team or one night a week that needs to be made up in all 3 fields. Usually it sort of starts to pile up, and we have to really scramble for that. And then, you know, the field, we run the field full time, and I'm going to show that in some metrics. But field prep is a very time intensive thing that we do. And so are pregame warm-ups, and those are very important. So we just don't obviously show and go when we get to the field. There's a lot of, you know, intermediate and inter-between activities. So that's sort of a profile, and hopefully that is familiar with a lot of us who have grown up playing Little League activities. This is basically, what here we do is, this is the week in the life of a single field, one of our 3 fields on average on the complex. And so on the left is basically what we would depict as what's our operational full-on capacity. We, on the weekends, we can probably get about 8 hours a day, Saturday and Sunday. That's if we start out at 9 a.m. and we go into the evening. We do try to operate at full capacity. The volunteers have to go home, and they have to sort of take time to do maintenance and reset, but we try to get the most out of these fields necessarily on the weekends. And in the weekday, as you might expect, it's the evening. So it's kind of that 5 to 7:30 period, which is when volunteer coaches get home and are able to coach. We really, unfortunately, cannot count the daytime weekday field slots, even though with COVID, as of late, we've had some more work from home parents who've been able to conduct practice. That's not time we can plan on in the future. So on the right here, if in the blue shaded bands, is sort of broken out by programming what we are able to currently do, and this is actually what we're able to do when the weather really, really cooperates. And so, we have the younger divisions from the very bottom, which I had on the previous page. They occupy about, with the numbers that we have this year, they'll occupy almost 8 hours per week on a field, and that's pretty much mostly the weekends. And then we have the kid pitch ages that will take up about 12 hours each week on a field, and that's games and practices. Each field will take 2 hours of makeup time. That's 1 makeup game a night if we're lucky. And then field prep, warm up, which pregame, I put that all into one because they also go simultaneously. That adds up to about 6.5 hours. A little more time, in the weekends in between longer sessions, and then sort of like a 30-minute pregame prep leading up to a weeknight game. By division, when you really get to the age 7 and up, we probably need per field another hour of practice or so per team. And there's a little bit more makeup game capacity that we fall short on. So we have some analysis. I can send you the data, but we really are short of capacity in terms of what we feel we need to do with these fields and what we actually do. And I just want to stress that the blue is what our schedule looks like during ideal weather. So this gets cut into quite a bit. So it kind of relates to some of the red space. This is spring. I want to just emphasize this is the spring in-town schedule. We have two-way control over rescheduling opponents within divisions because we control things. Our summers are materially worse. We play with and this is really on the baseball side. Softball deals with this spring and summer. It gets worse for them too in the summer with more towns involved. But when we have an issue with our fields, we have a counterparty that has to make adjustments and subsequent other adjustments. Summer, there's a similar imbalance, but the problem is just tougher to deal with. This is just the state, what the strain really looks like. Again, we do a lot of shuffling with the schedule. It's disruptive to us and our opponents. There's a lot of travel. We travel more than other towns, and Cohasset's not quite easy, not only to get to, but to get out to the towns that we play. Most of the coaches work in Boston or somewhere with a similar commute, so they really can't get home before 5 p.m. Some of them do take time off from work to arrange a practice, but that's not a strategy. So, the situation has been prone to the mishaps and the discord with other towns that they sort of look at us and say, what's the deal? You guys should, we would expect Cohasset, you have beautiful resources. We would expect you to have the capacity to serve these programs. I'm not going to read the feedback from the families in this appendix. They're more detailed feedback of kind of what our families say. These are longstanding families in the program, and there's some that are younger. They have the boys and girls. They really fit the profile that I described at the outset. But the pain points here really sort of, they exist. This is how the statistics bear out. A lot of comments about lack of field time, field availability, the burden of travel. Just fewer than 20% of home games at their own field. We feel in our community that while the facility is beautiful, we do everything we can to make it sparkle and it's a true gem, that it's just not remotely on par with what the neighboring towns have. And we feel that as we grow and as other towns improve, and I think this speaks to the opening piece that Michelle had shared. It's a lot to keep up with recreation facilities and keep these improvements. So we understand that, but we want to address this problem. This slide is kind of why I'm here tonight. It's my duty, I feel, to convey this feedback to the select board.
And I just, before you carry on, the board received this information ahead of time, so it'll be part of the record. So I appreciate that.
Thank you. And, I mentioned this in the correspondence too. There was a petition that we have that has circulated, and I think we're up to 600 and we're close to 630 signatures or more at this point. That petition really is, there are some families who've chose for multiple people in that house to sign that petition. Some are just represented by one. Some are names that may look like they're out of town, but they're alumni of CYBSA who really appreciate this problem and they understand what good facilities are like. But we have a lot of people that really want to know what we're doing to raise this issue. And what we do currently, and Mark Chase mentioned it, is we go over to Menace Field. I talked to Greg Gray, who runs rec over there, and I get field space over there on the baseball side. We go to Hingham, we go to other towns. We've been going over to Situate to rent their turf over there. It's a beautiful facility to get preseason practice so that we can, wait to use our fields until we can get them just right. So we don't incur costly damage. So that's kind of how we look at taking care of what we have. So we know what the request is, but I'll just detail it here. It's to install, our request is for permission to install self-funded state-of-the-art LED lighting on Chase Field. We've secured this funding. Additionally, we request permission to install self-funded state-of-the-art LED lighting on Freedom Field. We will continue fundraising for this upon approval of the project. I want to just point out that we want to request this under a very clear assumption that the lights will be of minimal impact to our neighbors. We define that as a zero light trespass on the neighborhood yards with no light cast on any parts of the yards and little to no glare from the poles visible from home. And there's a definition here. Mike Berry is here with Musco. There's a very practical, I think, illustration here, example of what that might be. We did enlist the input of the neighbors at the onset of this project as it started to really, I think, gain momentum. And we've been unsuccessful in terms of, I think, exchanging wishes and needs, concerns, technical details, our desire to not do this on the cheap, our desire not to sort of, in a lot of these towns, one of the kind of common ways to defray costs is you go get utility poles donated, or you sort of maybe go with a more economical type of light lamp. We've elected to go with the most state-of-the-art equipment that you see anywhere on, from the BC campuses all the way next door to Hull in Situate. So, we're going best in class with minimal impact. So that is the ask of CYBSA. We know we have a lot of recreation and space issues to deal with in Cohasset, and they're going to require taxpayer funding and to include some of our own, the ADA and others. We are coming to you with a very clear depiction of the problem, but also, we are working on the solution. We are offering the solution to the town, and we think that this is going to set us up really well for our capacity issues in the coming years. This is just one rendering what that lighting looks like. I'm going to leave it to Mike and Jared to sort of speak to the technicals of this, but the lighting today is state of the art. We investigated closely with some other towns who have recently put this in. One of the towns was Medway. One of the comments they made is, in baseball and softball fields, they have the bullpens that are kind of right outside the out of play line. You can't even warm up the pitcher with these lightings. You can't even see the ball. The lighting is very precise. It casts straight down, and it's something that we're very excited about. And there's some great technology that goes with it. I want to just emphasize how we wish to use lights. We want to lead with the principle of preserving our small town charm. It's very important that that Barnes Complex remains, probably next to Sandy Beach and the Common, one of the facilities that we're proudest of the most. Our board has been around a long time, and we'll continue to be the best possible neighbors. So we'll maintain a lights committee, as you might expect. We also want to make sure that this is a new family-friendly safe harbor venue. There's a lot of teens and tweens. A lot of them are part of our families. They don't have a lot of options during the at-risk hours. We think this is going to actually transform the complex, from a dark kind of, a dark place where we're not sure what's going on at night to a place that we can feel together and safe. A curfew is part of the request right now. That curfew is requested at 9:30. Some towns have it later, but we think this is a very prudent time to wrap up business and let people safely exit the complex. There's remote and app technology for the turnoff, and that can be in the hands of multiple parties. We really need all the capacity of this lighting. We don't really see this as something where we can just farm out a revenue opportunity and bring people in. We really want to restrict non-CYBSA activities. And we're open to really implementing harsh restrictions on that. One thing of note is we are adamant that we have zero desire, and we really see no practical possibility that lights could ever go up onto the Barnes Field. The Barnes Field is the field, obviously, for those of you who don't know, it's on top on North Main Street. It's just not an option. We don't think you would ever, as a town, permit to that. We wouldn't apply for that. We understand that as a board, we're going to be replaced by generations of other board members, but that's just something that it's not in our plans. And one of the things that does go on at Barnes right now is we have a 3-day permit for diesel and halogen, very loud portable lights that we use for All-Star Weekend. So those would permanently go away. So I think the net impact up near the neighbors, up on the Barnes top complex, the net impact in terms of lighting and noise would be an improvement for sure.
Darren, I just want to be a little bit mindful of the time. We're
Yeah.
at about a half-hour mark. So if you could sort of get to the technical,
Yeah, sure. Sure,
that
no
would be
problem.
great. And then,
Okay. Absolutely. So I'm going to turn to Mike, and this is just a list. You can look at it at your leisure, but these are the must-go projects that are throughout the state of Massachusetts. A lot of them are local. And with that, thank you. I'll turn it over to Mike to give a high-level overview.
thanks, Darren.
Hi, everybody.
You're
My name's
welcome.
Mike Berry from Musco Lighting. As Darren mentioned, that reference list is projects that we've done over the last couple of years in the state of Massachusetts. LED lighting has been around for, in terms of athletic applications, probably for the last 3 or 4 years, prominently, to the point now where LED is the only lighting solution for athletic field lighting. Metal halide, the older technology, is kind of falling to the wayside. This here shows you a photometric design showing what the light levels are on the field of play. And to the right, you can see it's 50 and 30 are highlighted. Those meet Little League standards and ASA softball lighting standards. That is values that are set and determined by those organizations for safe play for the age groups that are in those organizations. So what that means, when they're out there, they can see the ball, they can react to the ball, and also the spectators can enjoy the game and see the game in person.
Madam Chair, just kind of one comment, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I love, I'm super geek about lighting and all this stuff, and I want to geek out in it, but I'm wondering if it's a little bit early for that part of it yet. I mean, I think conceptually, I think I'm ready to kind of hear from neighbors and that kind of stuff before we really take a deep dive into, this is, I think, concept. I think the lighting is more execution. So just in my head, if that makes sense to the other board members, I'd love to maybe shift the order of operations here a little bit before we get too technical about the lights.
Sure. And again, should this project go forward, the details will be really with another board in town. But
Sure.
if I could, Mike, just one of the things that I'm interested in is just that the neighborhood impact, because that's clearly something that's on all of our minds right now. And I read that it doesn't shine outside. It's not like you see, it doesn't look like an airport from a mile away. If you could just address that, and then I agree with Corey, I'd like to kind of move into our questions and answers before we hear from some of the public.
Sure. Darren, can you advance the slides, or are you
I
driving?
can.
Okay. Let's just
He has
skim
more
through it.
power in this meeting than I do.
So did we include the ones with the evolution? I think we did.
Uh,
No.
These are the two brightness. Oh, this one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So just to give you overview of the technology, I mean, the other slides are showing the actual values, the data, the details, confirming that we don't have that glare impact.
Okay.
Sports lighting has changed a lot over the years. 1977, it was a spun aluminum housing. And then they added diffusers in the bottom to cut down on the glare out of the bottom of the fixture, to adding visors to the top of the fixture, to in 2005, we came out with our light structure green, which is a very efficient metal halide. And then 4 years ago, we came out with an LED fixture. The big difference with the LED fixture is the aiming angles of the fixture. It does cut off that viewing angle from the surrounding property. The big thing with sports lighting, you could show that you weren't going to have any light trespass, but if you're standing in your yard, you're still looking at those big bulbs across the street in your line of sight. With the LED product now, with the visors, and I don't know if Darren, if we included a kind of a cross section of the fixture itself in here, but
we did not.
hold on,
So
let me.
Okay, that's all right. I think it's a material fact, something I want to know about, that the glare is not what we imagine it to be. I just think that's fair for the conversation.
Yeah, it's a lot of people still kind of associate sports lighting with the older technology. Part of what we do as a company is we warranty it for 25 years. So any of those values that we put on a piece of paper saying you're going to have zero light trespass, glare at this level, we, after it's all installed and done, come back, take light tests, confirm that everything meets what was proposed. If not, we're out there making adjustments to fine tune it. So there's an assurance factor with using Musco, down the road.
Great, thank you. So what I'd like to do now is ask select board members for any of their comments. If there's members of the public participating on the Zoom platform and you would like to make a comment that our vice chair will read, please do so using the question and answer feature. And then I know we have one other member of the public who is in the webinar now, and we'll get to you, Mr. Gunderson, in a few minutes. So Jack had his hand up first, then Carrie, then Paul, then Corey. Jack.
Yeah, are we watching this? I don't know what we're seeing on the screen here. We're seeing the light structure. I don't know if that's
can we shop the share screen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Darren, if you could stop sharing, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, by the way, I think it's great, all the work that all of you are doing. I know back in the day, I used to coach girls soccer in elementary, which was interesting. One of the best things that I did is actually, it used to be back then, the boys had the fields and the girls got the leftovers, and I just stood up, and now the girls were treated equally. Anyway, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to all agree that our kids are important, and that there's two issues here. One is we all agree on that we need to support youth baseball, softball, girls, boys, whatever. But we need to separate that from the separate issue of lights and neighborhood impact. So I just want to think that we should be thinking in that way, and I'm looking at it that way. But for now, I'd like to listen a little bit longer.
Thanks, Jack. Carrie?
Yeah.
Carrie, do you have a comment from yourself?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm struggling with this because I echo what Jack said. I echo what a lot of our speakers have said tonight. Our sports is very much an important part of our community, and sports matter. They matter to our kids. They matter to everyone in town. And this is important. And I think that we do need to be placing a higher emphasis on our infrastructure with our facilities and our fields. And I very much think this matters. My biggest concern right now, like Jack said, is, I wish that we didn't have to be having this conversation about putting up lights very close to houses and neighborhoods. I wish that we had fields that were a little, more distanced from neighborhoods where it would be a no-brainer for me to easily put up the fields. But it does feel like the neighbors' biggest concerns right now are not just the light pollution, but it also seems like there are some other things that people are worried about, such as possible environmental impact, things like mosquitoes. It does seem like they're a little bit worried about things like noise and parking and traffic. So I just kind of want to get a better handle on, how much communication has happened with neighbors and neighborhoods, and if you feel like there are any types of compromise here. My other question is do we feel like it did seem like there's some confusion with some neighbors that I've talked to that thought that you were talking about lights on Barnesfield, and that doesn't seem to be the case now. So it does seem like there was some confusion on that. But is it possible that maybe it's okay to maybe put lights on one of these fields and not the other, right? Like, I guess I would love to find a compromise, and I hate that we can't have fields where this wouldn't be as much of a problem near a neighborhood, but I really do care about this. And I know how fun it is to play under the lights. And I'm wondering if we can come to some kind of compromise between all the stakeholders here.
Why don't we continue with the questions, and then maybe Darren, you and Mike and Laura can speak to anything in general. Paul?
So I think one of my concerns is it looks like every night would potentially be a lit field in a neighborhood area where it's not got lit fields every night on the weekends as well. And it does come down to the neighbors, and from the town point of view, it's run by the majority, but we have to respect the minority where there's a whole bunch of people that live right near there, and are gonna have lights pretty much potentially on every night of the summer, which, you know, I think we have to consider that as an option. As, you know, it may not be best for a small group in town, but that's a significant problem. The other thing I think is that we don't have enough fields in town. And I think that's where the biggest concern is. We need to find more open space and that's playable. You know, place like on Milliken, can we put in a second field up there? Because it comes down to practice and games that we can basically put in, because there'll be a lot of rainouts. I mean, my son and I went to, you know, numerous baseball games. He was playing from, you know, I don't know, the age of 6 or 5 until high school. And I've visited numerous fields. You know, there's one in Pembroke, which is shielded by a lot of town trees, and there's a town forest where they put the fields in that, and there's lights there. This is more of a lighting in a real residential area, which has my concern. That's all.
Corey?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I try to not to repeat what my fellow board members have said too much, but you know, I share the concerns. I think, you know, what Carrie touched on is you know, very true, which is, you know, we all recognize that we have really a critical. I mean, that number was pretty jarring, shortage of fields. And you know, if you came to me personally and said, hey, we need money to build 2 more fields, you know, I'd be there tomorrow with, you know, a shovel and doing whatever I can to help things along, including lights. One word which is being used here, and I did some historical research on this, and what I found was a lot of documentation about how these fields came into existence. Basically, this used to be a gravel pit, and a lot of the neighbors kind of got together and did a lot of work with a lot of love for the purposes of leaving the town a nice park area, turning a gravel pit into a park. And they had this vision and for something that our kids can enjoy. And I use the word park intentionally, which I think compares to like complex. I think that this area is a park. I mean, it's a neighborhood park, and I think there's challenges with parking. I know that people are parking in the Wheelwright Park, kind of the front field there. People are parking on the street, and I wonder if this, you know, forcing more traffic into that park really I has some negatives which I'm not too comfortable with. I am worried about, especially at night. You know, again, if lights are on and you're driving by, that glare actually makes it harder to see. And I know that kids are crossing the street, and if they're parked over on the side, you know, and then, you know, that street's not safe. And then we're building lights on the street and we're widening the street. And I'm wondering if investing in this park leads us down a path where we have to make other decisions that just don't make any sense. So I certainly have, you know, I'm certainly very sensitive to what we need to do here. I think that, you know, bigger, better, and somewhere else may be the better answer. That's my 10 cents. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Just a couple of comments and questions that I have. One of which is my concern is, lights notwithstanding, is just the activity level. And I think Corey, using the term park instead of complex is exactly the right tone that I think the neighbors want and that we expect to have for all of our, especially for our residential neighborhoods. So that is my biggest concern, is just the expanded use. You know, I think the argument, and I commend you for the presentation that you made with the lights, because I think there is a lot of sense. It looks to me like there can be some lights that aren't, you know, like an airport strip. There is a concern that it's very, very close to some, you know, historic houses and homes, but to me, it's really just expanding the activity level. Having said that, there is clearly a need, and to my earlier point, I think the town really does need to look at all of its field and recreation infrastructure and map this out. I mean, I know, and I keep using the tennis courts as an example, just because I have a friend that coaches, but you know, those are recreational facilities that pretty much any two people in town can use at one time. You don't need an organized team or an organized program. You can just go and hit a ball over. But we also have a varsity and junior varsity boys and girls teams that are quite large, with 6 courts, and and now this renaissance of pickleball and everything. So there's an opportunity here for the town to really look more holistically at our recreational and do what we need to do for our kids, because that it is important for us to do that. I have another question, and it's maybe to Michelle, and then I'll turn it over to Darren to answer any of the questions that are here. But I know that we have a neighbor that wants to speak as well and give us some historical perspective. Michelle, my question is, what other fields in town have lighting? Other than obviously the turf field, is there any lights at Beechwood?
Beechwood has lights, but it's only, I believe, focused on the basketball courts. I don't believe it's focused on the field.
And that's a neighborhood as well. I'm not suggesting, but I'm just trying to.
Yeah, and Milliken as well. I don't believe there are lights there. There were lights at one time on the tennis courts, but those are no longer there either. And the same for Sawyer Street, basketball courts only.
Okay. And then Darren, just, I know Carrie, I think had a question about how many nights a week you would be, you would be having games, and it doesn't get dark till 8. I mean, are we really just buying another hour and a half if we were to put lights up?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So, the 7 nights a week, and Paul, you had mentioned that number. We don't need 7 nights a week of operation. We think that, a reasonable number, and you mentioned the word compromise, 4 to 5 nights a week of night lights operation, I think would be acceptable. It does stay light out at the very peak of summer, but we really lose the benefit of the ability to play an extra 2-hour game slot pretty quickly. So, that's why they're so commonplace in these facilities. Basically, when you install lights, you basically get the double game usage capacity. So.
Okay.
And I'm happy to address, I wanted to kind of address all the questions, and if you just want to let me know the most efficient way to do that, I can keep going, so.
Yeah, if you want to just quickly address the select board members' questions, and then I'm going to turn it
Sure.
over to public comment.
Okay, so, I think we are very, very sensitive to any potential impact on the neighborhood. It's, my job from CYBSA standpoint is to convey to you the extent and the scope of the problem and how persistent it is. It's up for the town to decide, how to weigh that. We have people that they just feel that, and I know it might call into question the larger audit and, a bigger picture look at things. The town has a lot on its plate. We are trying to help ourselves here and make sure that we can sort of begin to operate on par with what, with what our needs are. We have 82 parking spots in the parking lot, and that is enough. That's more than enough to operate 2 games at a time, which is at 2/3 capacity. There are times where we run 3 games simultaneously and people are coming in and out. But the larger field, the field up top barns would be vacant. So we feel that the parking capacity is good. And with the ADA improvements, we'll even get more out of those. Finally, I would just say that we did engage the neighbors, and it did become a narrative that we were trying to light barns. We felt we were very emphatic in our discussions there by saying that was not the intent at all. So that was we weren't sure how that got out, but that was something that we had to contend with. We do know that there's a history behind the facility, and that goes back a couple decades. What we have today in Cohasset is a town that's far outgrown where it was then, and we have a population of kids and their needs have evolved. So we're just trying to meet what not only the needs are today, but where they're going to be maybe in 2024 and 2025. But we do appreciate the history behind the property for sure. So And thank you for letting me address those.
Great, thank you very much. So I'm going to recognize Harold Gunderson. If you want to put your, if you could just give us your name and your address, and I know you're a neighbor and
Yep. Hi. So can everybody see and hear me first of all?
very
Great.
clearly, thank you.
Hi, Diane, and good evening, Board of Selectmen. My name is Harold Smudge Gunderson. I think most everybody who knows me as Smudge, and I live at 186 North Main Street, which is a house directly opposite the main entry to the North Main Street fields. I've lived here with my wife and 2 kids since 1992. My son went through the Little League program, and I coached for a year or 2. Did that with a number of boys who are Diane, your son, and Paul, your son, Nicholas. It was a fabulous experience. And when we moved here in 1992, there was just one field. It was the Barnes field. And I think part of the reason we bought the house is because I've used the term Norman Rockwell-like environment in the area. The Barnes field was awesome. There was an eyesore, frankly, though, across the street, known as the gravel pit. For those of, I don't again want to repeat too much, but it really was a collecting area for leftover broken schoolyard and playground materials and swing sets and the like. There were cast iron sewer grates down there and curbing and whatnot. It was an eyesore, and it was much lower in the ground than the fields are, the Chase and Freedom fields are today, with a very steep embankment on the that would be the eastern side of the field. It ran parallel to the driveway today that goes back to the Cohasset Swim Center. It was a pretty unsafe setting too. That steep embankment. Oftentimes, the younger siblings of the kids playing ball would go down there. I can't imagine how many times countless cuts and bruises and whatnot were down there. So that was a bit of an eyesore. Concurrently, in town, and some of you will remember this, a significant renovation project to the high school, middle school was underway. And there was an opportunity for the town to save, I believe the number was upwards of $200,000 or $250,000, rather than having the contractor truck fill away from that project to some other location much further away. The idea came about. I'm not exactly sure how it happened, but whoever came up with it, it was a pretty resourceful idea to bring that fill down to the gravel pit area, clean out the gravel pit area, and bring that clean fill down there. So with a little bit of work cleaning it up, drilling some holes in the asphalt that was down at the very bottom, and then filling in the fill, you now wound up with a pretty nice playing field surface to work with. But the question became what to do with the property. It's an important piece of property. It's valuable to the town. And so in October of 2000, I didn't save much from those days, but I have the sort of official decree. The town set up an ad hoc committee that consisted, I won't read the names of the people, but rather I'll name off the people who were their roles as representatives. So there's a representative of the Board of Selectmen, a representative of the Department of Public Works, which also happened to be our very first town manager. Prior to that time period, we didn't have a town manager. The town was run solely by a select board. We had one representative from the Little League Baseball, because I don't think you were known as CYBSA at that point in time. We had a representative from the Recreation Commission / Youth Soccer. We had a representative from Senior Housing, and we had 4 residents as representatives on that committee. I would say that the tone of that committee was unbelievably collegial. We all wanted to see something good happen down on that property. There was a lot of debate about what should happen there. We looked at things like fire station, police station, combined fire and police station, senior housing, senior rec center, multi-purpose fields, and then of course, Little League fields. And after much sort of working through and talking through and sorting through and coming to an understanding that Little League fields would be great, provided that there wasn't signage or lights on any of those fields down there, the neighborhood wholeheartedly supported the development and building out of the Barnes and the Chase and Freedoms field. We even worked hard to help design the snack shack, and I did a lot of work on that. You can tell I'm not an architect because it's not a pretty building, but the intent was to make it extraordinarily functional so that in a show of support to CYBSA, parents and volunteers wouldn't be storing baseball bats and uniforms and equipment in their homes and their garages anymore. They could put them there and even put a second story on it so that there was some space for meeting rooms, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that came out of the gravel pit reuse committee, and it was a very collegial thing. And I think it shows that we, the neighbors, were incredibly supportive. And we're, to this point, have been generally pleased with the fact that those 3 ball fields are there. If I can, Diane, if you don't mind, I'll just diverge for just 1 minute and make one other comment. A little bit contrary to Darren, I don't feel like the outreach from CYBSA to the neighborhood has been at all good. There has been 1 or 2 meetings between myself and one other neighbor for an hour and a half in the parking lot. No effort to sort of reach out to the broader neighborhood. I'm only one neighbor. There's a whole host of neighbors who surround these fields. No presentation whatsoever like we saw tonight to try and help educate us. I'm a big believer that with perspective comes understanding, and we have not had an opportunity to gain any perspective. Many of my neighbors said to me just 2 or 3 days ago, I didn't even know this was happening until earlier this week when they saw the agenda or word spread around the neighborhood that tonight would be an initial presentation by CYBSA. So I disagree with Darren on that the outreach has been, from my perspective, suboptimal. I'll leave it at that. If there's any other questions, happy to entertain them.
Thanks, Smudge. Does anybody have any questions of Smudge? Corey, are you good?
Sorry, I'm trying to take notes here. Harold, and thank you for coming and talking. I mean, one of the people that was one of the other committee members was Arthur Lear, and the whole area, Barnes. I mean, these are families that have a lot of stewardship in this town, especially when it comes to conservation, open space and recreation. And a lot of times kind of quietly, not so much big flashy ways. So I do consider that kind of history, kind of the stewardship of these fields. And I would consider you a steward of these fields as well. You've heard kind of what the town is struggling with. And I'm sure you've thought in your head, kind of what the next version of these fields are. So just broadly speaking, seeing yourself or being seen as a steward, what would you see would be something that would improve the fields and get the town maybe forward? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I have, and it's a great question. I am a very big strategic thinker. I think all too many organizations, whether it's towns, states, private, public, municipal organizations, often play the short game, and that can be to the detriment of the stakeholders. You got to play the long game. And if you take a look at the outcome of that gravel pit reuse committee, we were thinking long term. Two fields got built because we worked together and thought about a longer term perspective. If it were up to me, I would say the cost, disruption, et cetera, of putting lights on those fields versus convening a committee, a collegial committee like we had successfully with the gravel pit committee, to look at the holistic needs of the town and try to find a place. I think about what's up behind Hingham Lumber. That's an out of the way place. I know it's private property, but I'm sure we could find a location somewhere in town that helps meets the needs, not only of a narrow cohort of Little League and girls softball, but perhaps of other growing and burgeoning sports as well, like lacrosse, and do it in a way that makes strategic long-term sense rather than trying to sort of solve for a shorter term issue, while at the same time creating a lot of disruption for the neighborhood and sort of, in my opinion, ruining the character of the heart of Cohasset. I would take a long-term perspective. This notion of a committee to look at bigger picture solutions, I think is the way to go.
Jack?
Yeah, I like the idea of the long-term strategic. Just to briefly, my takeaway from Smudge, from your things and the other things that I have read, and I was actually living in town at the time, there's a clear understanding that the kind of the deal was have the ball fields. One of the conditions is no lights. And I'm a believer that when neighborhoods make those kinds of binding commitments and allow something to happen, those agreements need to be honored, because it's really not fair. Because if you say, well, things have changed, then the original agreement loses its feasibility. And quite honestly, nobody will make agreements in the future if they know they're fungible. However, I do think what we've learned, and I think we have a real debt of gratitude to these hardworking volunteers of Little League and softball, girls softball, is that we have a lack of fields. And that's clear. Now, this lack of fields is forcing us to try to make an untenable decision for something that's clearly not fair to the neighbors, and it's not good for the long-term thing of Cohasset. So let's not get forced into that, but we do need, and I think to my fellow select board members, that we are clearly seeing here that we need to find some place in town to alleviate this. We need fields. And that's what needs to be done. And that's the real win-win solution. So that's my thoughts anyway.
Thanks. We're going to turn to public comment in a minute. Darren, you have your hand up. I just want to let you know that whatever you say should be addressed to the board.
Yeah, so just a voice. We would welcome the chance to re-engage collectively and collaboratively on this topic. I think for us, we found it difficult to be told it was a non-starter, that no amount of technical data or impact study was going to change minds up and down the street. We'd welcome that. I don't know that, I wasn't aware of an agreement by CYBSA back when Freedom and Chase were constructed to never implement lights. Obviously, that's something we would commit to honoring and cementing. So, but we do wish to continue this discussion. We do feel strongly about the impact being minimal. Thank you.
Thanks, Darren. Carrie, I'm going to turn it over to you for any comments that we've received through the Zoom platform.
Yes, and just a quick heads up for those of you that have been submitting anonymous comments, we don't answer anonymous comments. So please, if you want that question read, send your name and address. I'm going to go through the questions and comments that we do have so far. The first one is from Diane O'Leary. If you could please send your address when you can, Diane, that would be great. Diane says, I fully support this proposal as a town resident. Many town projects that move forward seem to do so with half of the thoroughness and researched evidenced by the CYBSA. This is yet another case of whether the voice of a small group should overcome the broader documented needs of the town. I think that's a valid point. Thank you for that, Diane. We have another comment from Anne Marie Witten saying, as for working with the neighbors, I want it noted that we were never notified of these plans by CYBSA. And let's see, she's there at 207 North Main. Also saying, we own the red barn next to the lit field photos. There has been no effort to work with or even inform us of this plan. We also have a comment from Jim Soderberg. Jim, please send us your address, saying, this is great history, but that was 20 to 30 years ago. This history is longer than the presentation and took away from the part of the CYBSA presentation that directly addressed the greatest concerns of the board and local residents. It's unfortunate. Another comment from Victoria Yang saying, I fully support this project because I support our youths and youth sports. These are not separate entities. And then a question from Jeremy Williams saying, does the sports complex on Crocker Lane have lights? Hold on, a couple more.
I believe they do, but that's private property.
David Canal says, would love to know why Mr. Creighton finds this project clearly not in the best interest of Cohasset. The rest
Carrie,
are anonymous, so. I'll
Okay.
keep monitoring if you anonymous people would love to
Did you-
reveal yourselves.
Carrie, did you get an email from Russ Bonetti with some questions?
I did. Let me pull that up. Hold on.
So I think most of those were comments. I don't know that anything needs to be answered. Thank you all for weighing in. If you
I
have
have-
Russ's,
Yep, I have Russ's email. A few questions from Russ Benetti. One, do the other towns have lights right across from the fields? Two, do the people who are endorsing the lights live near the lights? Three, how do the neighbors feel? Four, will you come to CPC for some items but not others? How will you decide when to come to CPC?
so I think many of those have been answered. This project, Darren, I think you're right, is you're looking to fund it yourself. You're not asking for public money. It's
Yeah,
just permission.
just to be clear, it's privately funded. It's not CYBSA raised funds, operational funds. It's a group that is solely dedicated to providing lights for the fields. So it's not potentially commingled money that could go to dugouts and things like that.
Thank you.
Diane,
Jack?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, my comment is the best interest of Cohasset, I think, is expanding ball fields. And I'm not sure that adding the lights is the way to solve that problem.
We have another comment from Dan Leahy at 215 Forest Ave saying, I was one of the key members when these fields were conceived and built. There was never a no lights deal. Further, it was never initially designed as a park. I spent hundreds of hours overseeing the day-to-day project progress, so I can attest to everything said tonight is accurate based on my personal involvement.
Okay, any other questions?
Tom Reardon at 46 Hobart Lane. Just would like to understand where the agreement that the fields would never be lit was ever documented.
Okay.
And then
I don't know that we have, yeah, I'm just going to warn everybody if I'm going to give you like another minute to put questions in, but otherwise we're going to stop accepting comments.
Trying
Carrie,
to
you wanna
filter through. Yeah. Jeremy Williams asking, have any environmental impact studies been done? Matt Rudnick saying, I was at the original meeting with Smudge and would have welcomed more discussion. I live in a 300-year-old house across the street and the lights will stream into my kids' bedrooms. Let's see. John Urquhart says, I fully support the proposal as a resident. We need additional capacity for our children, and this is the most practical solution forward. I think we're caught up.
Okay, great. I have two select board members with their hands up. Corey first and then Jack.
I mean, firstly, I think as a matter of process for this board, we need to figure out exactly how we're going to interact with the Q&A process. In a normal meeting, you'd invite residents to come up and make a comment, but I don't think that we should be using the Q&A function as a back and forth or as a way to add extra lines. I mean, this is a public meeting, and we need to be respectful of that and not treat it as a chat room. So that's just one concern. The other thing is I mean, I did a little bit of digging. I found some instances from the committee members about no lights. So at least among the committee members, I've found some documentation of that. I would like, to ask the town manager to work with the town clerk, whoever. This was just in 2000. I mean, this isn't ancient history. So, any type of meeting minutes or any type of notes that the town has, I think this would be useful, because if there was an agreement, then as I think Darren said, it's kind of open and shut. And I think, there's a confusion about whether that is the case, and we should probably answer that question, clear that one up first.
Great, thank you. Jack?
I just answered earlier.
Okay. Okay. Carrie?
One more.
And then,
Yeah. One
Go
more
ahead.
comment from Meredith Carlson at 20 Ledgewood Farm Drive, saying, as a parent of young children in town, it is disappointing to see a handful of residents being prioritized over the betterment of a much larger group of kids now and in the future. I fully support this project and think it would be foolish to walk away from a fully funded project that would support the youth sports programs.
Great. Okay, I'm gonna turn to my board just for any further discussion about some next steps. I feel like we're on the same page. We want to be helpful. We want to address the lack of playing fields and the ability to accommodate the kids in town that want to play softball or baseball. I don't feel like we have enough information, and I feel like there does seem to be some work, because it's not so much a prioritization of a small group of people, but their neighbors, and we all have to kind of live in harmony as best we can. And I would like to see more conversations take place with the neighbors, with CYBSA, to effectuate some kind of understanding and a plan. I also, as I said earlier, do think we need a more holistic approach to looking at field use, and I think this can be a big part of that discussion, should be a big part of that discussion. I don't know that I'm comfortable giving a green light to start the zoning process for the lights, but I'd love to hear from my colleagues.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've summarized kind of the what I have said as well, Dan. So I'm also not very comfortable moving forward in that.
Okay.
I'm not comfortable moving forward with it either.
Neither am I.
Okay.
I gotta say, I'm torn.
I know.
I'm struggling with how we can figure out some type of compromise here. I genuinely want to be able to please most residents in town in this regard, because I think it is doable. And I'm struggling with this because I do really see the sides here. I do. And I'm not comfortable giving a flat out no, but I want to see if there's a way that we can come together somehow to find a way to compromise on the issue, or figure out how to get lights on fields or more fields or something, because this is important and this is something we need to be talking about long term. So I'm torn on this.
So, and and I guess maybe a way of looking at this is this isn't the end of this discussion. Maybe this is the beginning. Unfortunately, with the way things are timed and the way the pressures that are on the board from January through May, we are so focused on town meeting and managing everything we have to manage to get that going. But Darren, if you would be amenable to maybe a meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks with some key neighbors and a member or two of the Board of Selectmen or a select board, and see how we might be able to advance this conversation, come up with some compromise presentation that we might be able to do, whether it's a timeline, that might not be to your exact liking, but might actually get us talking about moving forward with something that's going to enhance and better your program and serve the residents.
Yeah, we welcome that. So we can follow up on that for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, is everybody good? Enough? Yeah, it's not an easy business we're in. So I appreciate everybody's comments. Darren, Mike, Laura, that was a terrific presentation. I commend the neighbors for being so diligent about reaching out as well. And let's, do what Cohasset does best, which is communicate and sit down and solve problems together. So I look forward to continuing this conversation outside of this meeting, and we'll move this along. Go baseball.
And softball. Thank you.
And softball. Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
And girls softball.
Is there boys softball?
Yes.
Adult men's softball, sure.
Yes.
Oh, that's great. Oh, I have actually been to games.
But girls softball is better. So
they throw quite fast. All right. Thank you all for I think a really good conversation. Next up on the agenda is an appointment to the Ware River Water System Committee. We received one application. tremendously qualified, if I could say so. And he's here, Steve Girardi. If you want to turn your video and audio on, we'd love to see you. First of all, thank you for submitting your application for the position on the Ware River water system. And I hope you could, more for the public, just let them know why you're qualified for this role.
Okay. Thank you, Diane. Currently I'm vice chair of the Cohasset Water Commission. I'm also the engineering manager for the Hingham Municipal Light Plant. And I also serve on the subcommittee of the Alternative Energy Committee. So got multiple hats, and like electricity, the close would be the same, but it's obviously water and electricity don't match, but it's really the same principles. And I've actually enjoyed the Water Commission. It's very eye-opening, and being part of North Cohasset, it's about 300 residents, and my kid's about to come into the room.
Your hockey player?
It'd be good to represent the town of Cohasset and Hingham, knowing that we have a really good water system here, and hope we can provide input from our experiences to Hingham, and honestly be the voice of the North Cohasset residents. I think that's the most important part, because we are a small group compared to the Ware River system, but the small numbers do matter to us. So, I look forward to it if I'm appointed.
Great, thank you. Corey has his hand up.
I just want to observe that, Stephen, if you're appointed here, you'll be controlling both water and electricity, and multiple places. So you basically are in control of the entirety of the utilities of Cohasset. But I've been impressed with all the work you've done on other committees, and you've got my full support. I like how you approach things. I know that you've got a lot of knowledge in the area. So thank you for stepping up and volunteering.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate it.
Steve, did you, you don't anticipate any conflicts particularly with Hingham, with your job?
No, I don't, because it's two different entities. The light plan is a separate enterprise.
You got me?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yep. Sorry, Diane, you were freezing a little bit again. Go ahead, Steve.
So the light plan is a separate enterprise from the town. We're two different entities. It's almost like 7-Eleven and Rich Deals, right? It's just two different companies, and there's no interaction in between the two. So, if there happened to be, I would obviously let the Board of Selectmen know so they can reappoint somebody else. But there is not.
Well, why belabor a good thing? Unless anybody has any other questions, I'll look for.
I move that we nominate Stephen Girardi. What are you running for, Stephen?
An appointment.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist. Ware River Water Systems Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call, please.
Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks, Steve.
Great, thank you.
Good
folks.
luck, Steve. Yeah, you're gonna be busy, and I know you're involved with youth baseball too. So stay tuned for more conversations there.
Oh yes. And is MSB gonna notify me about being on the committee at all? I can reach out. Is somebody gonna let me know?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Tracy will send out an appointment notice very soon, and I don't know how it will differ from a straight Cohasset appointment, but we'll be in touch.
Okay, great. I hope everybody has a great night. Thank you so much.
You may need to be
Thanks.
sworn in Hingham.
Yeah.
What?
Tracy has her hand up. Steve, hang on one sec. Tracy.
I'm not sure if you heard me. I'll take care of it tomorrow. I'll talk to the Hingham.
Great.
Okay.
I'll reach out to you, Stephen.
Thank you,
Great.
Tracy. Thanks,
you.
Steve.
Thanks. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
last week we received and talked a little bit about the charge for the Harbor Governance Working Group. I didn't have any changes submitted, so unless anybody has any last minute flags on that, I think it's pretty safe. I worked with Lisa Hewitt, who drafted it and then did edits. Somebody would like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the charge for the Harbor Governance Working Group.
Is there a second? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, roll call, please.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Harry Thompson, aye.
Okay. The town manager can come back into focus.
I am back. A quick update. As part of the town's ongoing, just general public education efforts, the library is going to be hosting a great program on March 23rd, a week from tonight, at 6:30 online with Dr. Temple Grandin. Dr. Grandin is not only a leading animal behaviorist expert, but she's also a big proponent of those with autism. She actually is autistic herself and has been a pioneer in that area, just in understanding how having the public understand what it's all about and how those with autism can live in society. And there's a great movie, which I have not seen, but I've heard about, an HBO 2010 movie starring Claire Danes, lots of awards for that. So if you want to know more about Temple Grandin before the program, look up the movie. But the library's hosting her. It's next week. Please jump in. I know that I think there's reserved seats. I don't know how many you can do. It's all virtual, but it's a very exciting program. I know that Megan James and the entire library staff are very excited about hosting. So please mark that on your calendar before the select board meeting next week, so you can do that first and then join the select board meeting.
Well, I was going to say I signed up for that a couple months ago, and I was disappointed when I realized we had a select board meeting. So maybe go a little bit. I can send somebody my link if it sells out. Great. Anything else, Chris?
That's it for tonight. Meeting. So
I'm sorry.
I said that's it for tonight. We'll do a lot more with the warrant next week.
Okay, great. Thank you. Select board comment. Jack. You're on mute.
Jack, you're on mute. We can't hear you.
Yeah, that was good. I should have stayed on there. Anyway, to go over ground already well tilled, I think we've seen something. I think we've learned. We've learned that we really need more playing fields. And I think we ought to do just like the original group. We ought to look ahead and plan for the future. And I'd like to participate in getting Cohasset a bunch of more playing fields.
Great. Thank you.
Corey. Thanks. I'm encouraged by great progress with the vaccine. Still sad that the town isn't running them, but I do know that things are getting better, and I'm really looking forward to a good summer. So please, everyone, stay safe. A couple more weeks. Tomorrow, I think, is the last day of a restaurant in town. If you do frequent that establishment and you go inside, please still stay safe. We still have some, safety protocols which we should follow. And that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
So two quick things. Driving around town, daylight saving time is now on us, but I've noticed in the morning, there's been a lot of coyotes and a lot of deer that are getting chased by coyotes. So on the roads in town, just be very careful early in the morning and the evening. The coyotes will be chasing the deer. I almost hit a coyote and a deer in separate incidents as they were getting chased. And the other thing, that the vaccines in the state, we've now hit almost 26% of the population are vaccinated. I think we're now number 6 or number 7 for state distribution and injections. So we are, we're kind of surfing the second wave. We're getting to the beach in just a few more weeks. We'll get more production and stay safe. And that's it.
Thanks, Paul. Carrie?
Yes, happy St. Patrick's Day. And I'm also really inspired by all the town, community involvement tonight. I really think that I agree with what Corey and Jack just said. We need to keep talking more about these fields and how to deal with this situation. And also, for those of you that want to get involved in other fun, exciting things, we're still looking for parents and students and community members to help us with our planning for our June events relating to Pride and Loving Day and Juneteenth. So if you're interested in that, if you have a student that might be interested in helping with that, please send me a message, reach out. We're excited for possible events to come once we're all vaccinated. So yay.
Thanks, Carrie. Jack, I'm going to be in touch about getting you involved in those field discussions. I
Oh,
agree.
darn, I said something again. Oh,
Sorry, I'm just putting it out there in public. No,
no, I think so.
Great
I'm
conversation.
very glad to do that.
Wish we had it a couple months ago, but it just really, there was so many balls in the air. Here we are, and we'll continue. Two quick things. One, I just want to commend the Cohasset 250th committee, which I know that things didn't work out as any of us envisioned, but that booklet that was sent to all the residents in town is truly spectacular. I left it in the other room, or I'd give it as a prop, but I believe it was sent to every household, and it's really well done. The photos are nice, the writing is great. It just hits on all the key points and the real unique, and I hate to overuse this word, but very special elements of Cohasset that make this the community that we all love. So thank you to all of them for that project. And then this is a kind of a public safety thing that I almost brought up when Chief Quigley was on the phone, Chris, but we heard from, or I got an email, and I believe you might have as well, from somebody on Lambert's Lane, just about the speeding and the traffic levels now that golf season is coming. And that is one of the roads in town. It doesn't matter what the speed limit is. It probably should be 2 on that street. But it's very windy. There's a lot of sight issues there, and people do fly. And remember how much we've had to fight to get that road paved. That was like a 1.5-year project, and we got it paved, which was great in one way, except it makes it a lot easier to go faster on that road. So I think it's probably worth having a conversation with the chief about whether there's some kind of mitigation we can do, whether it's, those little road signs, the portable road signs or something, or they suggested speed bumps that were temporary and easily removable. I don't have the answer, but I think it's something that we need to bring up with the chief. So that's it. We have one set of minutes for approval from the meeting on March 9th. If anybody would
Make a motion, we approve the minutes of
like
3/9/2021
to make a
for Cohasset Select Board.
Second.
Okay. Jack?
As per my usual habit as clerk, we have much better ways to memorialize our meetings, and until such time as we employ them, nay.
Okay.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Great. I have no other topics, and I would like to call for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, you beat me, Paul. Come on.
How about a second, Jack?
Second.
All right, roll call.
Oh, Jack Creighton, aye.
Corey Evans, aye.
Diane Kennedy, aye.
Paul Schubert, aye.
Carrie Thompson, aye.
Thank you all very much. Good meeting.
Okay.
Thank
See everyone
Good
later.
night, everybody. Happy St. Patty's Day.